because they're really trained that good guys do everything they can to make their partner happy.
Yeah,
And and that can only go on for so long before somebody's going to start feeling resentment. So, and
absolutely.
it will show up as conflict. So,
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
it's awesome that you were able to get that honest with each other, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. That was a lot of work, y'all. You got to do a lot of work. Because I mean, the thing
Yeah.
about divorce is, I know what your expertise is in divorce resiliency and divorce recovery. And that was a lived experience. I always tell people there's some clubs I don't want to be a member of, but I am. And so like I wouldn't have chosen to become a member of, I should say, but I'm a proud member of those clubs because I didn't have a lot of protective factors. Divorce resiliency, divorce recovery, what I decided that I didn't want to take into the new marriage. I resented my husband, my current husband, because we had talked about all these things. I had talked about that I didn't want to be the same wife to him that I was. I never left my first husband feeling like I was the best wife. I was the best wife I knew how to be at the time. We were not good for one another because there was too little awareness of our own areas of unhealed behaviors and our own unhealed activities. And so while I didn't cheat on him, I was completely faithful. I tried to do everything I could. Being codependent and doing everything you can for somebody to please them, that's just as harmful as hitting them sometimes or yelling at them sometimes. I wasn't the best wife there is. I was the best wife I could be with the information I had about myself at that time. And so I wanted to take that information and figure out ways to be better. But how I wanted to become a better wife was I wanted to be better for me. I felt like if
Yeah.
I'm good for me and healing is a lifelong process because you're always having more triggers and injuries and different things that happen. So it's lifelong that I go to different places of healing. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to be my own main character in my own
Yeah.
story. I didn't want to make it about the marriage. I wanted to make it about my own resiliency, my own love for myself, so that anything that he gave me was additional and it was supplementing or supporting what I could do for me. And I wanted him to do the same thing for him. While I was doing that for me, he didn't have the capacity yet or the tools to do it for himself. And I didn't know that and I didn't recognize it because all I saw was his desire was what mine was. Oh, let's go with that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It can go both ways, it can go
Hmm.
both ways. Okay. So now you're together and you've kind
Hmm.
of gotten to a higher level in your relationship where you've kind of
Yeah.
worked through some of the conflict that was there earlier on.
Yeah.
Walk me through how you're able to take that and help other people.
So I think the first part is the part that I had alluded to earlier, which is I don't believe you can do your best work. And we used to talk about differentiation back in
Yeah.
school, right?
Yeah.
And where we would talk about differentiation, it's like you can't take people past the point that you haven't gone through and being differentiated, right? And so I feel like it's the same thing with healing. I think there's healing in theory, and I think there's the practical application of what that looks like. I think there's recovery in theory, and then there's what recovery actually looks like. I think there is true acceptance in theory, and then what it actually looks like. So, how we kind of got to that space and how I got to that space was I really wanted to think about okay, I've healed in a lot of ways, but I'm also understanding that this is a lifelong journey. I'm a lifelong learner. It's a lifelong journey. Learning how to love. The reason why I named the company Love and Acceptance is because I believe that that is really the foundation for many of the things. We had a professor that used to say to us, you have to, when you think about what theoretical approach you want to utilize, which I'm not a real theoretical approach person, but when you think about it, you have to think about how do you view problems, right? And
Mhm.
so when I think about love and acceptance, I believe that is the crux of all things, like even fair. Like
Mhm.
if I have acceptance that what's in my control, what's outside of my control, and that I believe that God or the universe will work it all out for my greater good, then there's but so many things that I actually fear in real time. I'm not saying I never
Mhm.
get fearful, but overall, you can really kind of overcome a lot of things when you think about the fact that I love myself. I love this experience, this journey of life. I'm learning how to love parts of myself that I didn't learn how to love earlier in life. I wasn't taught how to love and fully accept myself. So when I work with couples now, when I'm working with individuals even now, because some of the individuals I work with, they're going through divorces or they're trying to decide, sometimes it's discernment counseling, right? When I work with them, what I really talk to them about is, what are your values? So thinking about your values. If I'm really living life according to what I truly value, what I highly value, and I have that prioritization, that hierarchy in my mind, then I won't be engaged in activities or with people that I'm misaligned with. And so I think when it comes to setting boundaries and expectations, for example, those come based on what your values are. And if
That's
you
so
don't know what
true.
your values are, how do you set good boundaries and expectations? So I take facets of my life and I do consultations with my clients to determine, one, can I help them? And usually the client, I believe that you get like a magnet, the clients that you're supposed to get. So the clients I get, usually I've had similar lived experience in some sort of way, or similar emotional processes we've gone through. And so maybe I'm just a couple steps ahead where you can kind of shine the light through the use of like reflective questions, powerful questionings, to get them to get to the space where they identify that the problem you thought was the problem is never the problem. We always think the problem is, like today's pop culture will tell you a million and one things about narcissists, because we love to use narcissists, and I'm an empath and he was so if I told somebody about my relationship, my first husband, they'd be like, it sounds like he was a narcissist and you're an empath and he took advantage of that. That is not true. Everyone is not a narcissist. We all have narcissistic traits that we have in varying degrees, but everybody is not a narcissist. The truth is, the whole point of me going through all that painful experience was to figure out what I needed to figure out, which was I didn't have a sense of identity. So I use those experiences. I use anecdotal stories. Back when we were in grad school, they would say, you shouldn't disclose. I believe you shouldn't disclose what you already haven't worked through, and if it's not purposeful. But I find with my clients, the anecdotal stories that I use, just like how I brought you pieces of the past, it's not trauma dumping on them. It's not, talking to them like, yeah, I'm going through the same thing right now. No, it's giving them anecdotal stories, because sometimes people need social stories to be, and then they say, oh yeah, I have an experience like that.
I totally
so like, for
agree.
example,
Kind
when
of
it comes
validates
to
and normalizes for them.
it validates and normalizes. And even like current, my husband and I, when we do the coaching currently, we might tell them, yeah, we had an incident that occurred with this, and this is what comes up. Because the thing is, there is knowledge, there's theory, and there's practical application, and we're human. And so depending on my hormonal fluctuations, depending on if I've eaten or slept, depending on if he's eaten or slept and his hormonal fluctuations, our ability and what's happening externally, our ability to tolerate or to have tolerance or acceptance of whatever's happening in our environment is varying. And so we always have to dip back and say, what are the tools that I have at my disposal? Because I just yelled at him, or he just ignored me, or he just invalidated me, or he gaslit me. Like, you can gaslight somebody and not be a narcissist. Like, you can do it sometimes inadvertently. We can be guilty of that. And so just being able to call out those things, my goal with them is to help them build protective and resiliency factors, to help them identify their identity, their core identity based on their values. Right. And to help them to begin to get higher levels of differentiation from their role of wife or mom or friend or daughter or son or whatever, and help them to differentiate that. Okay, that is that. But then there's your core self. Let's focus on doing the work here. It'll permeate out to those other roles.
Yeah. So just so the listener understands exactly what differentiation is, because we know,
Oh, yeah.
but, maybe not everybody knows. So
Yeah.
how would you describe it?
So in real layman's terms, I would describe it as separating yourself and your experience from others around you.
Yeah.
So like, if you are in a space, if my husband and I, he might be in a bad mood, right? And if I'm not clearly differentiated from him, like in his experiencing, right, then I might feel like that bad mood is about me, right? Or what did I do? Or I can't soothe him, right? Versus his mood is about him. And even if I had a part to play in it, when he wants to, he'll tell me. And so I don't have to sit in that space to be in that bad mood with him, or I can sit with him and it not
Not
permeate
own it.
into me, not
Yes.
own it, right? Sit with him and say,
Yes.
I really hate this for you. I see you're in a not so great space. How can I help support? He may say, there's no way you can. I might have empathy for him and feel like, I really hate this for him and I hope he can get through it. But that doesn't darken my doorstep. That doesn't darken my day.